Thanks for that very thorough walkthrough through the proposal submission tool. It's a lot to digest. So we're gonna end going through the help desk, giving some tips for writing your proposals, and if there's time by the end, if you have any questions, any more questions, any feedback, or if there's anything else you'd like to discuss, try to do that. So the first thing, something that we've mentioned quite a few times and that you might have noticed going through all these things is that when in doubt, it's really useful to ask for help, right? We don't want you to to get your proposal rejected just of something that wasn't completely clear. So if, or because you, or for something that could have been solved before the proposal deadline. So in those cases, it's very useful to use the help desk, right? So the link to go to a help desk is it's a simple one, help.nrio.edu, and it does require you to have this my.nrio.edu account to submit help desk tickets. Now we're gonna go to a help desk and see how that looks. Real life, how that works. So if you go to help.nrio.edu, this is the landing page. So this window's away, and the first things that you might want to check when you're here are, well, the news, see if there's anything relevant, anything has changed since the last time you were here, and if you are if you have problems with something, it's usually a good idea to first see if anybody else has had the problem before. So let's just go ahead and search for GBT and see if anybody else has had any questions with GBT on its title. And you can see that there are a couple of things. So for example, you have a question about, there was already a question about Vegas configurations. You can check what's in here, and here this is something submitted by our staff, so it wasn't a particular question, but just something so that people know that you can find the proposal's guide over here. That contains most of the information about Vegas. And if whatever information you're looking for is not in the proposal's guide, please do submit a help desk ticket. So let's say I have a question and it's not covered by in the proposal's guide about Vegas, then I would go to submit a help desk ticket up here. And the first thing it's going to ask me is to log in. This is why we do need this my.nrio.edu account. In this case, it didn't go through the login page, probably because I didn't clear my cookies, but now we're logged in. Basically, you can tell because the login button is gone, and you can see that now it's with my user there. So you can check your profile here, the previous submitted tickets or chats, and in this case, we're just gonna go through the process of submitting a help desk ticket. So the first thing it's gonna ask, well, your name and email. Those are auto-filled by the your user account, and then it asks for a general topic. In this case, it's a GBT question. Because we're asking about Vegas, gives you the option to CC somebody else. So if you, for example, if you and your collaborators are having problems, you can CC here. And then it's gonna give you a list of departments depending on the kind of question you have, right? So if it's a question about the preparation of a proposal, you can submit it to the proposing department. If it's about the review process, you can submit it to the proposal review department. If it's about observing, and so on. There's also GBT data reduction, data access, and general queries. For example, if you want to visit the Greenback Observatory and you don't know where to register your visit, you can use the GBORs, or if there's something not covered, you can use this section. So in this case, for example, we are interested in, we're writing a proposal and there's something about Vegas that we don't understand, so we're just gonna put it, oops, under the proposing section. It's going to ask us again for the telescope, and then it has a subject and a message, and say like Vegas move 4 for Vegas 850 megahertz. Sorry, Vegas 850 megahertz mode available. Since we were seeing, for example, that you can select this in the sensitivity calculator, but we couldn't find it anywhere in the in the list of Vegas modes. You might be wondering, well, is this really a thing? And you could say you can fill in your message, and then you can add files if it's necessary, and just hit submit. I'm not gonna do it, but that basically will create a ticket, and then you would get a reply from our staff with an answer to your question or asking for more details. And once you get a reply, you can just reply to that email, and it's basically how most help desks work nowadays. So I'm gonna exit here and continue with some tips for proposal writing. All right. So we went through the live demo. So once you write your proposal, right, one of the things that you really want to make sure of is that it's a great proposal, right? You want it to stand out, and you want it to be such that it that gets accepted and with a good category, so that in a good category, so that then it is guaranteed that the project will be observed, so you can do your fantastic science, right? This, of course, depends a lot on your science case, how well you're able to explain things and illustrate your points. And that's something that we could give whole classes about, so I'm not gonna go too much over that, but I will try to give you some just general tips about how to make a good proposal. And I should say that all this was very nicely put together by one of our previous postdocs, Natalie Butterfield. So kudos to her for helping us write better proposals. So in terms of the science justification, that's one of the parts that we haven't covered. But the general message is to be clear and when you explain your result or the science you want to. So be thorough but concise, right? Don't, I mean, explain what you want to do, but don't go on and on and on about it. You know, you want to explain how your maybe very specific science project relates to a broader of astronomy. You can do this with a introduction. You want to make sure that you're citing most recent work, and especially any work that's relevant to what you want to do. And of course, you want to talk about how the observations you're proposing to do are going to help you answer this question, right? And something else here is that you might want to also discuss what would happen if, for example, if you wanted to detect ammonia, but you don't detect any ammonia, what is this telling you about what you were observing? Something that's really important and we haven't stressed enough here is that the review panel is usually people from very different areas, right? Looking at your proposal. So it's very important that you don't assume that the person reading your proposal is an expert in what you're doing, right? You have to explain it at a level that any other professional astronomer would be able to understand. So be careful with things like acronyms, try to explain those things, and just the general ideas, also explain them. And this is also particularly important when when you're getting into too technical things. You do need to keep this in mind. And yeah, some more tips like Don't try to blind with science. Keep things simple. And if there's a great figure that shows your point, use the figure. And if there's something that's easy to explain with words, but not with a figure, use words. In terms of the technical justification, that I would say the most important thing is use the sensitivity calculator unless you're doing something really different and special. Stick with the sensitivity calculator because that's something that we can check and understand easily. Make sure that you include the output from the sensitivity calculator and the mapping calculator into your proposal. Make sure that you're using the latest values. I've been part of proposals where we forgot that Vegas is now available. We're using data for all the receivers, so make sure that you are up to date and fill all the fields, right? Like Jesse was showing us, even if you have to fill in NA, do fill in the NA. And when you're explaining, for example, what the inputs are for your sensitivity calculations, make sure that you are explicit about why the choices you're making, right? If you're going to say, if you need a sensitivity of 10 millikelvin, do mention it explicitly. Hey, we are going to, this proposal targets a sensitivity of 10 millikelvin. So you put it in there, and then we are going to use frequency switching because it's a very crowded region, so we don't think we can find anything without lines nearby. No, just make sure that anybody reading your technical justification can understand why you made the choices you made. Of course, don't ask for a receiver that doesn't exist anymore, or if you need to integrate, I don't know, if you need to observe for impossible things. The instrument you're requesting for should be justified for by the science, right? If you want to observe ammonia and you want to do it using the L-band receiver, that's just not going to work. And make sure that you that the time you're requesting has to be well justified. So even if you need, for example, a couple extra hours to test something out, you should mention this. You should not just add a session out of the blue and not say anything and be like, well, maybe they won't notice. No, that's not gonna work. Be explicit and say, hey, no, I need 2 extra hours to test this or this or that. Some tips again, if in doubt, contact us. Use the help desk. Technical justification. You can use as much space as you want. So make sure that you include the relevant information. And like Jesse and Emily have been stressing before, make sure that you include your overheads and that you estimate them using what we're recommending. So look at the proposer's guide, look at the observer's guide, and see what the recommendations are for pointing and focus depending on the frequency. If you're doing high frequency and you need to autofocus holography, you can check how long that takes and how often you need to do it. And also, if you're observing sources all across the sky, make sure to consider that it can take something like 5 minutes to move from source to source and include those things in your overhead. And again, if some of the information is not clear, just ask. That's what we're here for. Some common mistakes while writing a proposal, particularly on the technical side of things, is that, for example, if you wanted to observe continuum, you could the sensitivity calculator is going to tell you that you can observe as deep as you want, right? As long as you have enough time. I mean, as long as you keep throwing time at an observation, you can go deeper and deeper. But in practice, there's the confusion limit, right? So you have to keep that in mind. And one of the rows of the output of the sensitivity calculator tells you what's the confusion limit at the frequency you're observing. It's also important to recall that the receivers are not perfect, so there's a limit on how yeah, there's a combination. You can get more sensitive, right, if you have a larger bandwidth, but at some point, if you're integrating for too long and have a huge bandwidth, you're not gonna be getting more sensitive because of the 1 over F noise. So you have to make sure that the bandwidth times the integration time is within certain limits that have been empirically determined for the GBT in this memo. Make sure that you check the RFI situation. If you cannot find the plots, ask. And for the latest things, we're working on a new tool that makes it easier to look at the RFI scans. But yeah, make sure you check this. And if you're going to be affected by it, try to develop a plan to work around the RFI. And again, use the sensitivity calculator and the map calculator. So in terms of the review, it's there are different panels depending on the science category of your proposal, and you will get a grade by the end of it. The first one is a numerical grade between 0 and 10, where 0 is the best and 10 is the worst. And based on the grade that you get from the time allocation committee, from the science review panel, then the time allocation committee will put your proposal into one of 4 groups, which can be A category, which means that your proposal is going to be active for 1 year, and the scheduler is going to give it high priority so that it's very likely to be completed. B is active for 1 semester and it should get most of the time. C, it's active for 1 semester and it's usually only filler time. That means if there are gaps in the schedule, your project is likely to go up, but if there's like a wonderful day for high frequency observations, it's not likely that you would get the time. And N means that it was accepted this round. And that's what I wanted to say about the tips on the proposal. So now if there's additional questions, I have a few minutes to talk more about things.
Jesse or Pedro, do you perhaps know the answer? I'm a Mustang observer, so I don't use the sensitivity calculator. We do our own thing.
Yeah, sure. Right, so if my source is larger than the field of view, should I leave the source diameter at the maximum value in the sensitivity calculator when calculating time per beam? Right, so yeah, when it comes to the sensitivity calculator, you do want to go with the size of the object. If it is larger than the size of the beam, then yes, you are going to want to choose the largest on the slider. Because basically what that's saying is that you're only generally able to collect what's in the beam. So if the source is larger than that, it's effectively as large as the beam, as far as the telescope is able to observe it.
Are there any questions concerning any of the presentations? I am aware that it is 5 o'clock, but if you have any other questions, please do feel free to ask us. We can stick around for a few minutes. And thank you for attending.
Yeah, thank you guys for being here. We are going to put these videos up as soon as we can. The slides are already available, I believe. And then we will be having another hour-long session focused on Q&A next week, particularly for those who were not able to attend today, but could watch the videos at a later time. However, if you do still have pressing questions, we are more than happy to try and answer them there for you.